This week we're painting loose and messy watercolor florals and foliage in Procreate, based on a freehand sketch and finished with a hand-lettered stamp. The color palette for this project is free as always. Just tap on the link in the video description and you can download and install it. I'm going to start by creating a brand new canvas. I've listed my specs on screen, and let's begin. Okay, I've got my brand new canvas, and let's first set our background color. So come into your layers, tap on background color, and choose the very first color. Next, we're going to freehand a sketch, and I will provide this sketch as a free download in the video description if you want to use the same one, but trust me when I say there's nothing special about this. The magic will really come from using the brushes, and we'll be using my messy watercolor brush set for this entire project. There's a lot of stamp brushes, and there's also painting brushes in there as well. So it's basically everything that you could possibly need to create loose and messy watercolor artwork directly in Procreate. So I'm going to go into that set right now, and there's a bunch of different categories here. We're going to start with the messy extras. This is where all the painting brushes are, and I'm going to grab the sketching pencil brush, and I'm going to change my color to black, so just double tap where black is, and on this very first layer we're going to draw our sketch. And for the sketch I'm going to have two flowers. One's going to be a little bit larger than the other, and then I'm just going to add in some different shaped foliage around them. So the first flower is going to kind of come up like this. I'll create that transition area between the stem and the petals, and I'm going to do some really loose petals. When I said there's nothing special, I was not kidding about that. And then I'll have this one kind of come up and head in the same direction because I want some lettering right here. So I kind of want your eye to come all the way around. So that is the reason for that decision. Very loose here. I'll give it some leaves, and then we'll have another piece of foliage come up, and this will just be foliage. There won't be any flowers on this one. And then I want to add in something coming this way to balance it a little bit better. And this one will have like, makes me think of like goldenrod or the things that make you sneeze a lot. So these will just be little stems, and then there'll be little dots on the top, but it's foliage. These aren't flowers, or they could be if you wanted them to be. And I'll add some leaves onto that, and I'll have one more to kind of balance this, but not totally give it symmetry here. I want it to be a little different. So these are just like little branch stems coming off. Super technical here. We'll add in some leaves on this. I've got kind of a gap right here and a little gap here, and I'm just going to fill it with some really simple foliage that's a little bit of a different shape. So I'm going to do these rounded leaves versus the pointed ones. And we'll do the same thing over here to fill this out. So this is giving me some asymmetry, and I think that's good. All right, I'm going to make it closer to the final size. And like I said before, I'm going to have some lettering right here, so I'm just being aware of that. I actually think I want it a little skinnier. So this is one of the only times I'll do a freehand transformation because it's a sketch. This isn't final artwork, so I would never do this with final artwork. So this is my sketch. I will provide this as a free PNG, so it'll have a transparent background for you if you want to use the exact same one to base your messy watercolor florals off of. I'm going to label this layer sketch, and we'll create a brand new layer right above it. So this is where the messy watercolor brushes come in. I want to start with the pink petals on this. So I'm going to switch my color to the pink. And these are all abstract shapes. Messy shapes number one is kind of typical shapes you would see. They're angles, they're straight lines, and regular curves, whereas shapes 2 are more abstract shapes. Even if you don't consider yourself inherently talented when it comes to painting or drawing, these will take care of you. You have nothing to worry about. You can really grab any of these and make it work for this style of flower. Let's grab shape 66. Stamp it in with your finger. That'll guarantee it comes in at the darkest that this was painted in at, and then you can reduce the opacity later if you want. And since this is already kind of angled, I can just position it in here. Then I've got a petal right away, and I'm just kind of loosely following my sketch. And then I can create a brand new layer, grab another one of these. I'll grab 67. Make sure your uniform is selected down here for when you're transforming this. It'll just keep your shapes a lot more beautiful. And grab another one. So these ones are curving up, and now I need one that's kind of more centered. So that's what I'm going to look for this time. 73 might work. Let's try that out. Pop that right in the center. And then we'll grab at least one more right here. And this one's going to curve the opposite way. I'm going to grab 68. And remember, if this were curving the other way, you can always hit flip horizontal and it'll flip it. So you can use any of these stamps and they'll work whichever direction you need them to work. All right, I think I can get away with just 4 stamps here instead of 5. So this is what we have just from doing that. And if I turn off my sketch layer, you can see we're already starting to get something here. And what I like to do is with at least one of these layers, I'll change the blend mode to multiply just to get more of a variety in the shades of pink. So I'll grab like the third one we did, this one right here, just tap the little N and then drag this up until it hits multiply. And you can see we've got a darker blend happening here. It just gives it a lot more personality. And you can do this with more than one if you wanted to. I do at least one of these for this style. So I'm going to group all of these together. This will be the large flower. And then I'll create a brand new layer, drag it underneath the large flower group. We'll turn our sketch back on and we're going to do the exact same thing for this flower. We're on this new layer, head back into our shapes. I will grab 59. And if it's too chunky on the end, I'm going to show you, if you hit warp, you can pinch the point so it gets a little pointier if you need it to, or if this needs to get wider, the warp tool will help you a lot with that. And then just switch to uniform and then you can position it. So let's turn off our sketch, take a look at how this looks, and now we're going to paint in the main stem of these, and I can group these ones together. I'll label this one small flower. All right, and if we look at the sketch, the stem overlaps the actual petals, so we need to create this layer above our large flower group. Create a brand new layer. I'm going to switch to the dark blue, so it's the third color, and then in your painting brushes, come up to Messy Extras and select the Tuesday water brush. And now we're going to freehand some of this, but it's nothing scary. It'll be really easy. For this transition area, I'm just painting lines up, so nothing crazy here. And they don't even have to look great or uniform. We're going to fix that with some smudging. So we just need to make sure it's overlapping the petals on the edges. And then we can draw our stem down. The size of my brush, I'm right around 20% for this. I'm just going to draw this down, following the sketch, and then I can do the same thing with a small flower. I'm leaving this on one layer. I'm not going to do these ones separately. And then for these leaves, this brush, the Tuesday water brush, if you go little pressure, lots of pressure, little pressure, you can get leaves pretty quickly. And if you want them even bigger, just increase the brush size. I'm up to 25% now. If you press really hard, you can get the wider leaf. So I'm just going to use that method to paint in these leaves that I had sketched in. All right, let's turn off the sketch and see how that looks. And now we're going to clean this up a little bit. So this area, we're going to smudge. So I still have the Bloom and Bleed selected. I'm going to push some of this out, and sometimes I'll stipple, so it just makes it kind of messy, and other times I will pull, so I'll paint with it, so it looks like the color is bleeding. Or I'll do like small stippling, and it'll blend it a little bit better, where it feels more like watercolor. And I can make it a little bit messier by just stippling on the edge to make it a little more inconsistent, like the paint's bleeding out from the edge. I can even do that with a stem in a few places. If you'd like to learn more about painting messy watercolors in Procreate, I have an entire course called Messy Watercolors in Procreate. In that course, you'll learn how to paint a variety of different subjects in the messy watercolor style, and there's even a full bonus module on printing your messy watercolor artwork. So I'll leave a link on screen and in the video description to that course. I am going to add in some extra shading at the base, as regular flowers would be a little darker as they're meeting the stem. Those petals are meeting the stem. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. This is going to be above both flower groups, but beneath the stem group. So I'm going to label this one Blue Stem. Okay, so on this new layer, I'm going to grab the pink color. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. And I'm going to make sure I've got my Tuesday water brush selected. And right at the base, I'm just going to draw some lines up in different lengths. So I've got some variety here, unlike the stem. Okay, and then we're going to smudge these ones too. Let's move on to our other elements. I can group everything we've done so far together and just label this one flowers. I'm going to turn the sketch layer back on, tap on the sketch layer, create a brand new layer right above it, and now we're going to take care of this large piece of foliage. And this foliage is going to be the darker yellow color, so it's the 4th color. I've got my water brush selected, and this one I'm going to freehand paint. So I'm just going to follow that sketch, and then when I get to the leaves, little pressure, lots of pressure, little pressure. Okay, and we can smudge this one up again. I like turning off my sketch layer when I'm smudging, that way I can see how the final look is beginning to take shape. You don't want to do every edge. It's just some inconsistencies, some watery areas here and there. And now this is pretty flat color, so I want to introduce another shade to it. I'm going to create a brand new layer right above it, change the blend mode to multiply, and return to the Tuesday water brush. And I'm just going to add in some darker edges to some of these, and I can add a little bit on the stem too. And we're going to smudge these so the two colors blend. All right, grab your smudge and smudge these out. And once again, I switch between like stippling the color and pulling the color. Let's head back into our layers, turn on our sketch layer. We could group our layers, our 2 layers for that element together. And now come back to the sketch layer, create a brand new layer right above it. I'm going to grab the lighter yellow color, so it's the 5th color. I've got my Tuesday water brush, and now we're going to paint in these elements. So draw the stem in, I'm going to put both of these on the same layer. And then for the tops, I'm just going to put pressure on the brush and draw a little line down. We'll turn off our sketch layer. All right, we can add a little bit of messiness to these stems. I'm not going to add quite as much because this is a smaller element, and the information that I want the viewer to receive can get lost pretty easily if I smudge this too much, just because by nature it's a smaller element. All right, we'll do the same thing that we did for this one. We're going to add a little bit of color variety. So create a brand new layer, change the blend mode to multiply, head back in with your Tuesday water brush, and we'll add some extra color to some of these. And then we'll smudge them. And then the last thing we have to do if we turn on our sketch layer is to add in these little details. So I'm going to group the 2 that we just did together, and then tap on the sketch layer, create a brand new layer, grab the brown color, and we'll paint these ones in. Okay, let's turn off our sketch layer, mess these ones up a little bit. I want these ones to fade into the background just a little bit more. I'm thinking they might be just a little too dark, so I'm just going to reduce the opacity down to like 85% on those, and that feels better. That's all set, so now we can start getting really messy, and this is one of my favorite parts of this whole process. So I've got all of my groups right here. This was that last foliage. So one of my favorite tricks for tricking the eye into believing that this is real watercolor is by using washes. I'm going to come down to my sketch layer, create a brand new layer. So these details will be behind all the other elements that we painted. I'm going to grab my dark blue color. I'm going to head into the messy washes, and you can pick any of these. We're looking at washes between wash 18 and wash 27 for this. I'm going to grab wash 24 for this, and we'll see how that looks. I'm going to increase the size a little bit, coming up to 45%, and then tap it in with my finger. I'm going to reflect it, so flip horizontally, and then position it right behind my blue artwork, since this is a blue wash. So that feels good. I do have a few gaps that I'm not crazy about in here, so I'm just going to smudge those to close them up a little bit. And if you have any hard edges that you want to be a little softer, you can smudge those out too. So you have a ton of control. Even though we are using stamps, you can customize it and really make it your own. Next, we're going to add some to the flower. Since our flower is the main hero subject of our layout, I'm going to put some pink behind it in the same way. So I'm going to create a brand new layer. I'm going to grab my pink and let's choose another wash. Let's try out wash 18. Stamp that in. And this one's a little more subtle than the other one. And you can rotate it, reposition it. So I like that right around there. I think I'm going to have this bleed off the top a little bit on this one. And I want to take this edge and smudge it into the wash so I can open up my flowers layer now. And on my large flower, it's this one. So I'm going to smudge this edge so it kind of bleeds into the background, into that wash. Next, we can add in our splatter. We're almost done. These are just all final details. You can choose to add them or not add them. I'm going to create a brand new layer up at the very top. I've got my pink color. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. And now I'm going to have some paint splatter just coming off of this petal. Since it's a strong line right there, I want to exaggerate it a bit more. So I'm coming into Messy Splatters. I'm going to grab Splatter 18, stamp that in. I'm going to reflect it. And you can warp your splatters too. Like if I want this to follow that curve a little bit better, I can just grab the warp and just pull it a little bit. And now I've got more of a curve. One other thing I like to do with splatters is to soften some of them as if they got splattered on a wetter area of paint. And that can also make it more believable. And if you don't need all the splatter that you have, you can take the eraser and erase some of it away too. You don't have to keep all of it. And then I want to create a brand new layer. I want to bring in one more larger splatter, Splatter 04. That way I can tie these two together a little bit more. So I'll move this one right around here. Change the blend mode to multiply. And we can reduce the opacity on this one a little bit. I'm going to come down to 85%. And once again, smudge to soften some of these. And then I also want a little bit of yellow splatter and just a tiny bit of blue splatter. So create a brand new layer, change the blend mode to multiply. We'll change the color to blue. I'm going to grab Splatter 6. I'm going to add a little bit more in there. So a new layer, I'll grab Splatter 3 for this. And then we'll bring in a little bit of the yellow. So create a brand new layer, change the blend mode to multiply, grab the yellow. For this one, I'm actually going to go into Messy Extras. I have a lots of splatter painting brush, and let's paint some of this in. Sometimes I'll paint this in and just use it as a stamp, and other times you can just paint a lot at once, and then I'll give you a large area of splatter. I'm going to call that finished, but we need to add some watercolor paper on top of it so it looks like it was painted on watercolor paper. So at the very top, create a brand new layer, change the color to black, so double tap where black is to get true black. I'm going to come into the Messy Extras, grab watercolor paper number 1. My size is at max. I'm going to zoom out and paint across my canvas until the entire canvas is covered. And if we zoom in, you can see that paper texture. Change the blend mode of it to multiply so everything blends a little nicer. Duplicate this and reduce the opacity of the duplicated layer down to about 50%. And then we can pinch these together. And then we can add in our lettering. So I'm going to create a layer right underneath the paper texture. I can label this one paper texture. Create a brand new layer right beneath it. Select the blue. Last week I gave away this set of 10 love lettering stamps for free. So you could use these. You could hand letter in your own message if you'd like. I wanted to use one of these stamps, so I'm going to grab the Hey Lovely one and just stamp it in. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit the like button, subscribe, and I will see you next time.